You're not special, but neither am I. You see, much of what we train and how we train and who we train with is just a product of proximity. We happen to just be where we're at, and we have to make good on what's available to us. It's all well and good to say, well, this is better than that, or whatever, but the fact is that better, and quite honestly, the best, if you could even quantify that, typically doesn't exist in a widely available range for people. They get stuck with whatever's around, and that's okay with a few caveats. Of course, you need to be a good student. Even if you don't have a particularly good teacher, if you're a good student, you can go pretty far putting in the additional homework on your own. And you can fill in a lot of those gaps with books and videos. And I know people don't like to hear that, and you certainly can't replace, having somebody to guide you through the journey, but you can do a lot on your own with a good friend or two. Of course, you need outside eyes. You can't do it by yourself. Even if you can't find a reasonable teacher, you can find people who would like to share the journey with you, and that can be helpful. In fact, some of the best training in my life has been peer training, where we just get together and kind of bounce off of each other, and that is a really, really important part of your training anyway. And no, that's probably not going to take you to some world-class level, but you can go pretty far on that. But back to the main point, much of what you end up training ends up really just being a product of that's just where you were. And that's okay. So, oftentimes people have asked me, well, why Wing Chun? And I did a video on that before, but people have asked me, why Wing Chun? Why catch wrestling? Why Savate? People always have, questions or critical comments, and I'm okay with that. It's healthy to question things. And the biggest thing I can say is, because that's what I do. Every one of those I fell into. I did Kempo when I was young because that's where my dad put me. He wanted to make sure that I was going to a school that he thought made sense, and he liked what he saw at the Kempo school better than what he saw at some of the other schools. Does it mean that he made the best decision? No, not necessarily. But it got me to where I am today, so he clearly didn't make a bad decision. And, learning Savate, well, that just came with the second Kempo school that we went to. We became invested in Kempo at that point, and the second Kempo school we attended ended up having a guy that, had 4 different, black belts or equivalent, and, teaching Savate as part of the curriculum just came along with it. I had never even heard of Savate before that. It turns out I really liked it, and it flowed well with the Kempo and what we were doing, and it added an extended range that Kempo doesn't necessarily work well in. Kempo is a very kind of middle range art. It's just kind of how karate styles are. And going from that into MMA, well, I had never really considered doing MMA, but when I was in college, I met a guy that was like, hey, I'm running a kind of after-school martial arts study session. You're into martial arts, you want to come down, check us out? Turns out they were doing MMA stuff. Lo and behold, man, that was really cool. And adding all this grappling stuff in on top of it and learning how to transition between striking and grappling was really cool. It wasn't something I sought out. It was just one of those things that just kind of happened, and I fell into it. And then after that, moving out here to Arizona after having done amateur MMA in Michigan, I ended up back at the Kempo school just because it was what was available, it was what I could afford, and I wasn't too hot on it anymore. There were a lot of things that MMA had kind of adjusted my perceptions on, but I was willing to suffer for the time being until I could find something better. And one of the guys at the Kempo school literally was looking for something else, and he found a Wing Chun school, and he's like, "Hey Saul, you should check it out." So I checked it out. My very first class, I was like, "This is what I need to be doing," and it just fell in my lap. Wing Chun wasn't really on my radar. I had heard of it, but it wasn't on my radar. And I was really looking to segue back into the MMA world, and I just happened to fall into Wing Chun, and well, that led to my current career. Through my Wing Chun group, of course, Wing Chun being what it is, you meet a lot of JKD guys, and one of my Kung Fu brothers is an instructor under Dan Inosanto, and so he keeps his ear to the ground on a lot of things, and he saw an advertisement for a catch wrestling seminar. He's like, "Hey Saul, you might like this. You did MMA, you should check this out." And again, I had heard of catch wrestling. I had heard of it as far back as like 2004 was probably when I was introduced to it being a thing that even existed. And I was like, all right, cool. I've heard of it. Might as well try it. And it was amazing. And it was just like, hey, I guess I'm going to do this thing now. And that has been the story of how my martial art journey has gone. And so much of it really is just, I just kind of walk into a room and I do a thing and I like it, so I stick with it, and if I don't like it, I don't. And I've had to learn how to make these things work for me, and I do that by spending a lot of time bouncing ideas off of peers. I do that by spending a considerable amount of time just sparring and testing. I do a lot of video and research, a lot of reading, because when you can break things down to the undercurrents, the core principles of the things, and look beyond the techniques, look beyond the form, look beyond the shape, look beyond the aesthetic, and you start looking at the core principles of things, you start learning how to make just about anything work. And that's a really, really powerful thing. So it's not about, buying into, hey, this is the best thing or that is the best thing. Do I think Wing Chun or catch wrestling or Savate or Kempo are the best anything? No. They suit a purpose, and they contain sufficient, powerful enough tools to use if you do your homework, and they are really, really fantastic ways to go about it. Does that mean that you can't get there with more, conventional MMA things like, Muay Thai and BJJ? No, those things are fine. If you have a karate base and it's easier for you to segue into Dutch kickboxing, that's great. Those are all good things. But this kind of cult-like mentality of, well, this is better than that there's clearly no scientific evidence, because they just don't do studies like that. But even just the observational, anecdotal stuff, right, you're going to find more success across things that are more widely studied by people simply for the fact that you have a larger pool to draw from. And you just by the Babe Ruth principle, swing at everything, you're going to hit something. Eventually, you're going to find people that are good at making things work. But the fact is that no art works, and no art doesn't work. They are mechanical models to get you into how to move your body in a physical conflict. And there's all the secondary stuff that goes with it, and those are powerful things too. But what we need to look at is not how special you might want to think your art is. It's more along the lines of how can you make that toolbox work for you. As an amateur artist, I spend a considerable amount of time looking at various art production, videos on YouTube and things like that. And it is incredible to see what a high-class professional artist can do with a cheap set of Crayola colored pencils. It really does come down to how you're using the tools in your toolbox. It absolutely matters if you have the right tool for the job, but within those categorical, categories, there are still a large variety of, higher quality and lower quality tools to be had. But the fact is that if you know what you are doing, you can do absolutely amazing stuff with lower quality tools. There is a low threshold for how low you can go, but the fact is that it's there. You can do so much with a mediocre toolbox if you know what you're doing. And yeah, maybe you have to work a little harder or whatever, but the fact is that, again, if you can only get, McDojo Karate, if you are a really, really good student, you can go pretty far with that if you do your work and you put in the time outside of class to make things work. It's not about being special. It's not about buying into the right thing. It's not about, joining the cult of whatever. It's about taking what's available and doing the best you can with it, right? Katanas are fine swords, but they're made out of really, really crappy iron. How do they do that? They do that by working the iron until it's something better. And they're not magic swords. You guys know my opinion on that. They are not magic swords by any stretch of the imagination. And there are good ones and there are bad ones. But the fact is that Japan didn't have very good iron. Not at all. And they made some of the most respected swords in all of history, at least in the modern world, simply for the fact that they took what they had and they worked with it. So don't worry about, am I doing the exact right thing? I really want to study this style, I really want to study that style. It may not be available to you, at least not in the form that would be useful to you. So take what's available and run with it, work it until you have produced something amazing out of something that may be truly mediocre at its base form. You can do it, and it's not about being special. I'm certainly not special. And I want you to stop getting, that worked up in your head about, but I'm right because, sunk cost fallacy, right? You don't have to buy in so hard that you start, digging your heels in like that. That's not how that works, right? If somebody comes along and says, well, I'm doing really great things with this, that doesn't invalidate what you've done, right? So just take the ball and run with it. Do your own thing with it. I guess that's it. I know kind of a somber video today, but that's just where my brain's at right now. And I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. In the links down below, you can find our social media, and I encourage you to follow us there. Take a look at our blog, where we have articles that go into depth that we just can't do in our video productions. And on top of that, go to our Amazon store, pick out a shirt that you like, and every little bit helps. If you're ever in the Phoenix area, look us up. Come in for a class, come in for open mat, whatever. Love to see you down here. You can find all our contact info on the website. Talk to you guys in the next one. Good journey.